Okay, welcome to the next lecture of ES 300. Today we're going to go back inside an electric utility and talk about short-term operations. So last time we talked about long-term system planning, which is the process that utilities go through to make sure that they have enough but not too much generation capacity. And so part of that involves forecasting what electricity demand is going to be in the future and planning accordingly to make sure you have enough capacity. We talked about how having enough capacity doesn't just mean meeting electricity demand, but also having some extra, having a reserve margin in case something goes wrong. We also at the end talked about how renewable energy like wind and solar is treated in long-term system planning, specifically towards meeting peak electricity demand. So in general, the discussion hinged on how do utilities decide when, how much, and what type of new capacity to build? Today, the sort of quasi-final exam questions that pertain to this class are: what is the objective of the system operator when scheduling electricity production at power plants? What are the economic and engineering characteristics of different types of power plants? And also, what other types of constraints are placed on system operators when scheduling plants to meet demand? So last time, I introduced this issue of timescale in long-term system planning. We talked about how decisions about how much capacity a system is going to have, how much generation capacity, need to be resolved down to the hourly level. We have to know what the peak level of electricity demand is going to be in any given hour of the year, and be able to have enough generation to cover that and then some. And in that context, we saw this figure. But even though this figure itself wasn't particularly useful to us because things are aggregated onto an annual level, long-term system planning is thinking about changes in electricity demand over the future on this type of time scale, on the order of years to decades. Then there's seasonal planning and operations. We know electricity demand changes seasonally in the Southeast. In a place like North Carolina, electricity demand is typically higher in summer than it is any other time of the year. Winter, it's also pretty high, and in spring and fall, electricity demand is the lowest because of a lack of cooling and heating demands. Now, when we talk about short-term operations, at least today, we're really going to be talking about timescales on the hourly to daily level. So this is the scale of decision-making we're considering. How do electric utilities or system operators control the assets that they already own in order to meet electricity demand that's fluctuating on a daily and hourly basis? So the context here is that we are going to put ourselves in the shoes of a power system operator. Now, that can mean two different things from our discussion of the history of the electric power industry. You should know that there are two different ways that the electric power industry is operated in the United States. We have independent system operators, or ISOs. These are third-party, not-for-profit organizations that oversee competitive wholesale electricity markets. The closest example to us is PJM Interconnection. This is the big deregulated market that stretches from the North Carolina-Virginia border up to New York, but not including New York, and over to Chicago. And so PJM is not one of these individual colors. The individual colors on this map represent the footprints of utilities. So these would be companies that own some generation, and those power plants would be competing with each other against power plants owned by other utilities, other colors on this map in the wholesale market. And then the retail distribution companies associated with these utilities would be buying electricity from the wholesale market and delivering it to retail customers. Now, PJM is the third-party decision maker that's in charge of operating the transmission assets across this interconnected market, as well as scheduling electricity production across all of these different zones based on their competitiveness. We could also think about power system operators being monopoly utilities with exclusive control over a given geographical area. So the example that's nearest and dearest to us in North Carolina is, of course, Duke Energy. So as of today, Duke Energy controls most of the power system operations in the entire state of North Carolina. And so, for all intents and purposes, today we're going to think about Duke Energy and PJM interconnection as really having the same goal. They're in charge of scheduling generation at power plants throughout their system control areas in order to meet electricity. So in both cases, both for an independent system operator like PJM interconnection or a monopoly utility like Duke Energy, the question that we're trying to answer for them is, what is the best way that they can use power plants that have already been built to meet fluctuating electricity demand? And today we're talking about demand that's fluctuating on an hourly and daily basis. And so when we say the word best, that implies that we're going to be performing some sort of optimization. There is going to be a final answer, a single best decision that we can make. And so if you recall some of the terminology we used from the lecture on firm production decisions, we have two different aspects of this problem: the objective and constraints. The objective is what our goal is, and the constraints are the rules that we have to follow in meeting that goal. So what's the objective in this case? Well, it's to minimize operational costs. We want to find the way that we can schedule generation at all our different power plants that results in the lowest possible cost. What about the constraints? Well, the number one constraint on power system operators is to meet fluctuating electricity demand. We've talked about why, especially in wholesale markets for electricity, we consider demand for electricity to be perfectly inelastic or inflexible. And that's because reliability of electricity is so important to modern life that it absolutely has to be met. So meeting electricity demand is not the only constraint that we're going to think about today. We will discuss additional constraints a little bit later. But for now, we were left with this fairly simple problem where we want to minimize the operational costs that are associated with meeting electricity demand in every hour of every day. So a visual way to think about this objective and our one constraint that we're considering so far is the task of filling in all the area under this fluctuating line. If this line that's going up and down represents fluctuating electricity demand, we have to meet that demand, which means we have to supply all the generation that's required in every hour of every day. So what's the cheapest way to fill in that area? Well, fill in with what? Well, the resources that we could be using are somewhat predetermined. We're assuming that the power plants that we have at our disposal have already been built, so we're not making a choice about what types of power plants to build. We're sort of stuck with whatever the generation mix is in whatever particular area we're in. So this pie chart shows the existing capacity mix in the United States as of 2017. So about 30% of total capacity, generating capacity in the United States comes from coal, about 20% from nuclear, 32% from natural gas. That's been a big shift in recent years. Natural gas generation has increased while coal generation and existing capacity has decreased. And we'll talk about why in future lectures. About 7% of installed capacity comes from hydropower. And wind and solar represents about 8%. And this this is a piece of the pie that's been growing rather quickly as well. So this generation mix also varies significantly by region of the country. And so you could see each one of these individual pies associated with each state is a little bit different. And just visually, you can see that those pies represent some of the resource mixes that are associated with these different geographical areas. For example, in Appalachia and in the Mountain West, where there are abundant coal reserves, we see that the generation mix is dominated by coal in this case. In the eastern United States, where water tends to be fairly abundant, but we also have a lot of people, there is a lot of nuclear power because nuclear power requires a lot of water for cooling. In the Northwest, where the U.S. federal government built lots and lots of hydroelectric dams throughout the 20th century, we have a lot of that electricity generation coming from hydropower. In California, you have a lot of natural gas and not much coal. And that's because of very strict air quality regulations. So California is our leading progressive environmental state. And so their generation mix is defined in large part by environmental regulations. And then in the Gulf Coast region, so Texas through Florida, we see pretty large shares of natural gas. And that's because a lot of the oil and gas refining activities in the United States are located in the Gulf region.